The readers of the four chaplains will now be escorted to their seats by Girl Scout troop from the Bristol Service Unit. Please rise for the posting of the colors. And salute.
Present arms. Post the colors.
2.
Reassemble.
Please welcome Unit 209 member Monique Melanson Hunter as she sings our national anthem. And salute.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Wonderful job, Monique. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Leo Benola and Mr. Rick Leach to come forward as they lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Uncover.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please remain uncovered until taps and the retirement of the colors. I'd like to ask at this time that you now turn your attention to Pastor Joanna from Gloria Day Lutheran Church as she now leads us in the invocation.
Let us pray. Creating God, we know that you are a God who is loyal, a God who will never forsake us, a God who is love that goes without end. We give you thanks for people we encounter in our lives who show us your love and who give us an example of what it means to live a life of faith. Tonight, we give you thanks for the lives of Chaplain George Fox, Chaplain Alexander Good, Chaplain Clark Poling, and Chaplain John Washington, for the way in which they showed us a glimpse of who you are, and for how their lives in service to others. We pray that you would inspire us tonight, that you would inspire us to lead lives that show a glimpse of your love and our light for the world. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. A special honor or remembrance of our POWs and MIAs is rendered at most American Legion ceremonies. With us today to conduct this remembrance is our Post 209 Commander, Brian Avery, and assisting him is Mr. Ron Gagnon, former finance officer for Post 209. Commander?
POW MIA empty chair. For those that have served and those that are currently serving in the uniformed services of the United States are ever mindful that the sweetness and enduring peace has always been tainted by the bitterness of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasures, there are those that have to endure and may still be enduring the agonies and pain of deprivation and imprisonment. We call your attention to this small table. It occupies a place of dignity and honor. It is set for one, symbolizing the fact that the members of our armed forces are missing from our ranks. They are referred to as POWs and MIAs. We call them comrades. They are unable to be with their loved ones and families, so we join together to pay humble tribute to them and to bear witness to their continued absences. We call your attention to the small table that occupies a place of dignity and honor. It is set for one, symbolizing the fact that the members of our armed forces are missing from our ranks. We refer to them as POWs and MIAs. The table is small, symbolizing the frailty of one prisoner against all of his or her suppressors. The tablecloth. The tablecloth is white, symbolic of the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. The single rose. The single rose is in a vase, signifies the blood that they may have shed. In the sacrifices to ensure our freedom of the beloved United States of America. The rose also reminds us of the family and friends that our missing comrades will keep the faith while they're awaiting their return. The red ribbon. The red ribbon on the vase represents the unyielding determination for the proper accounting for our comrades who are not among us. The slice of lemon. The slice of lemon on the plate reminds us of their bitter fate. The salt. The salt sprinkles on the plate reminds us of our countless fallen tears as the families await their return. The glass. The glass is inverted. It cannot toast with us at this time. The chair. The chair is empty. They're not here. The candle. The candle is reminiscent of the light of hope, which lives in our hearts to illuminate their way home, away from their captors into the arms of a grateful nation. The United States flag. The United States flag reminds us of many of them may never return. They have paid the supreme sacrifice to ensure our freedoms. Let us pray to the Supreme Commander that all our comrades will soon be back within our ranks. Let us remember and never forget their sacrifices. May God forever watch over them and protect them and their families.
We will now sing hymn 888, which can be found in your hymnal. I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight. It's a night that we, and actually throughout the whole American Legion, cherish. It's a night that we honor the four chaplains. Before we get into the opening statements, I'd like to welcome a few distinguished guests. We have State Senator Henry Martin in our attendance. Henry, Senator. We also have former Mayor Bill Stortz. Thank you for being here. Also with us are officers from the department, district, and post levels of the American Legion, the American Legion Auxiliary, and the Sons of the American Legion. Welcome to all of you. We have been honored with the presence of a special guest here tonight. That guest is retired World War II Army Sergeant Major Salvatore Orlando. He served in Company E, 15th Battalion, 7th Regiment, 3rd Division. He retired after 35 years of service to this great country. He not only served in World War II, but he also served in Korea. Let's give Sergeant Major Orlando a round of applause that a World War II veteran truly deserves. On February 3rd, 1943, the troop ship Dorchester was hit by an enemy torpedo and sank to the bottom of the North Atlantic. Of the 902 young men on board, only 230 survived, and they owed their lives to the courage and leadership exhibited by heroic four chaplains who, in sacrificing their lives, left a unique legacy of brotherhood. This ceremony is a tribute to those courageous chaplains and the 672 brave young men who lost their lives on that fateful night. Furthermore, this ceremony honors all those who have served and those whose courage and faith shall sustain our country. We have a responsibility to teach our children and youth about these great events and the great sacrifice, for they are our future. They must know and understand what selfless service on behalf of others can accomplish. I will now ask John Wright, Mr. John Wright, and Mr. Chris Hoffman to come forward to conduct the reading of the Saga of the Four Chaplains. John is the commander of Squadron 209 and National Executive Committeeman for the Sons of the American Legion, and Chris is a Squadron 209 member and Boy Scout Master of Troop 9.
The story of the four chaplains. On the evening of February 2nd, 1943, USAT Dorchester, on the crowded to capacity, carrying 902 U.S. troops, merchant seamen, and civilian workers. Once a luxury coastal liner, the 5,649-ton vessel had been converted into an Army transport ship. Dorchester, one of 3 ships in this SG-19 convoy, was moving steadily across the icy waters from Newfoundland toward a U.S. base in Greenland. Coast Guard cutters Tampa, Esplanada, and Comanche escorted the convoy. Hans Danielson, ship's captain, was concerned and cautious. Earlier, the Tampa had detected a submarine with its sonar. Danielson knew he was in dangerous waters even before he got the report. German U-boats were constantly prowling these waters, vital sea lanes, and several ships had already been sunk. Dorchester, now only 150 miles from its destination, but the captain ordered the men to sleep in their clothes and keep life jackets on. Many soldiers sleeping in the ship's hold discarded the orders because the engine's heat. Others ignored it because life jackets were uncomfortable. On February 3rd at 12:55 a.m., a periscope broke the chilly Atlantic waters. Through the crosshairs, an officer aboard U-boat 223 spotted the Dorchester. After identifying and targeting the ship, he gave the orders to fire a fan of 3 torpedoes. The one that hit the decisive and deadly sinking the starboard side amidship, far below the waterline. Alerted the Dorchester, sinking rapidly. Fewer than 20 minutes, the Dorchester would sink beneath the Atlantic's icy water. Tragically, the hit had knocked out power and radio contact with the 3 escort ships. The Tampa, however, saw the flash of the explosion. It responded and rescued 97 survivors. The Espanada circled Dorchester, rescuing an additional 133 survivors. 1 died later. The Comanche continued on, escorting the remaining 2 ships. Aboard the Dorchester, panic set in, chaos. The blast had killed scores of men, and many more were seriously injured. Others stunned by the explosion were groping in darkness. Those sleeping without clothing rushed topside, where they were confronted first by a blast of Arctic air and then the knowledge that death awaited. Men jumped from the ship into lifeboats, overcrowding them to the point of capsizing, according to witnesses. Other rafts tossed into the Atlantic drifted away before soldiers could get into them.
In the midst of the pandemonium, according to those present, 4 Army chaplains brought hope and despair and light in the darkness. Lieutenant George L. Fox, a Methodist minister. Lieutenant Alexander D. Good, a Jewish rabbi. Lieutenant John P. Washington, a Roman Catholic priest. And Lieutenant Clark V. Poling, a Dutch Reformed minister. Quickly and quietly, the 4 chaplains spread out amongst the soldiers. They tried to calm the frightened, tend the wounded, and guide the disoriented towards safety. Witnesses of that terrible night remembered hearing the 4 men offering prayers for the dying and encouragement for those who would live, said Wyatt Fox, a son of Reverend Fox. One witness, Private William Bednar, found himself floating in oil-smeared water, surrounded by dead bodies and debris. I could hear men crying, pleading and praying, Bednar recalled. I could also hear the chaplains preaching courage. Their voices were the only thing that kept me going. A sailor, Petty Officer John Mahoney, tried to re-enter his cabin, but he was stopped by Rabbi Good. Concerned about the cold Arctic air, Mahoney explained that he'd forgotten his gloves. Never mind, Good responded. I have 2 pairs. The rabbi then gave the petty officer his own gloves. Later, Mahoney realized that Good hadn't been carrying 2 pairs of gloves and that the chaplain had decided not to leave the Dorchester. By this time, most of the men were topside, and the chaplains opened a storage locker and began distributing life jackets. It was then that Engineer Grady Clark witnessed an astonishing sight. When there were no more life jackets to hand out, the chaplains removed theirs and gave them to 4 frightened young men. Rabbi Good did not call out for a Jew, and Father Washington did not call out for a Catholic, nor did Reverends Fox and Poling call out for a Protestant. They simply gave their jackets to those next in line. It was the finest thing I had ever seen or hoped to see this side of heaven, said John Ladd, another survivor who saw the chaplain's selfless act. As the ship went down, survivors in nearby rafts could see the 4 chaplains bracing against the slanting deck. Arm in arm, they were heard praying and singing hymns. Of the 902 men aboard the Dorchester, 672 died. When the news reached the United States, the nation was stunned by the magnitude of the tragedy and heroic conduct of the 4 chaplains. Valor is a gift, Carl Sandburg once said. Those having it never know for sure whether they have it until the test comes. That night, Reverend Fox, Rabbi Good, Reverend Poling, and Father Washington passed life's ultimate test. In doing so, they became an enduring example of extraordinary faith, courage, and selflessness. In 1944, the Distinguished Service Cross and Purple Heart were rewarded posthumously to the chaplain's next of kin. And in 1961, President Eisenhower awarded a special medal for heroism, a one-time award authorized by Congress and intended to have the same weight and importance as the Medal of Honor.
For many times, a part of this fateful night goes unnoticed. That part is the story of the rescue and the rescuers. The United States Coast Guard performed heroically that night, as they always do. Hundreds were rescued that night due to their efforts. Here to tell the story is Mr. Tim McLeod. Tim, please come up. Tim is of District 1 Junior Vice Commander, and he also serves as the Senior Vice Commander here at Post 209. A lot of times you'll hear District 1. For those that don't know, that's not familiar with the American Legion, that comprises of Harford County. We are in District 1. So thank you, Tim.
The Coast Guard rescuers, Charles W. Davis Jr., rescue divers, and more. When the USAT Dorchester was torpedoed early in the morning on February 3rd, 1943, two of the three escorting Coast Guard cutters, the USCG Escanaba and the USCG Comanche, undertook rescue operations on each Coast Guard cutter, saved approximately 100 survivors. In their own separate way, the way the officers and crew of these two ships saved lives in heavy seas and in frigid temperatures reflected on the great courage and skill of their men. Aboard the USCG Escanaba, Lieutenant Robert H. Cross helped develop a new technique to quickly save the merchant crews suffering in the cold waters of the Arctic seas was put into use that morning. Volunteers from the ship put on rubber suits, tied a rope around their waist, and jumped into the water. Called retrievers, these men were essential, the first rescue swimmers, and they saved many men that morning. Aboard the Comanche, a cargo net found adrift in the ocean a few weeks before was put over the side of the ship. 12 volunteers went over the side, climbing down on the net and grabbing survivors of the Dorchester from the water and passed them on to the ship. One of the rescuers from the Comanche, Steward Mate First Class Charles W. David Jr., not only saved the lives of many of the USAT Dorchester passengers, he also saved the lives of some members of his fellow volunteers who developed hypothermia working on the cargo net. Unfortunately, Steward Mate First Class Charles W. David soon developed pneumonia and died. The story of the rescuers was preserved through the efforts of Judge Barry Sachs, a Chapel of the Four Chaplains board member, who before his death in 2014 devoted years in finding eyewitnesses and participants of these acts of courage. In February 2013, Judge Barry Sachs presented a lecture at the World War II Museum in New Orleans that featured Dick Swanson, one of the 12 volunteers from the USCG Comanche who went down on the cargo nets. Dick Swanson told the audience that his life was saved by Charles W. David Jr. The Chapel of the Four Chaplains is proud to also tell the story of the imagination and courage of these rescuers. In recognition for his efforts, in November 2013, the United States Coast Guard commissioned in Key West, Florida, a fast response cutter in the Sentinel class as the Charles W. David Jr. The Chapel of the Four Chaplains was pleased to attend the commissioning of the vessel and see Sharon David, granddaughter of Charles W. David Jr., participate in the ceremony. On behalf of the Chapel of the Four Chaplains, Barry Sachs presented a plaque to the Coast Guard that honors Charles W. David Jr. that it hangs in the cutter. A picture of Charles W. David also hangs on the wall of the Chapel of the Four Chaplains in Philadelphia.
Okay, at this time we're going to honor each of the four chaplains. I'd like to ask the readers of the four chaplains to come up one at a time, starting with Jennifer McLeod, be escorted by one of our Girl Scouts. Jennifer is the District 1 Auxiliary President and is also Unit 209's auxiliary president. She will be reading for Chaplain George Fox.
George L. Fox was born on March 15, 1900 in Lewiston, Pennsylvania. In addition to George, he had a sister, Gertrude, and brothers Bert, Leo, and John. When George was just 17, he left school and with a strong determination convinced the military authorities he was 18 and joined the ambulance corps in 1917. Shortly after the United States entered World War I, George was placed in the ambulance corps and shipped to Camp Newton D. Baker in Texas. On December 3, 1917, George embarked from Camp Merritt, New Jersey, and boarded the U.S. Huron en route to France. As a medical corps assistant, he was highly decorated for bravery and was awarded the Silver Star, Purple Heart, and the French Coup de Grace. Upon his discharge, he returned home to Altoona, completed his last year in high school, and went to work for the Guarantee Trust Company. In 1923, he entered Moody Institute in Illinois, where he married at Winona Lake, Indiana. After he withdrew from Moody, he became an itinerant preacher in the Methodist faith. A son, Wyatt Ray, was born November 11, 1924. After several successful years, George held a student pastorate in Downs, Illinois. He entered Illinois Wesleyan University in Bloomington, Indiana in 1929 and graduated with an A.B. degree in 1931. Again, as a student pastorate in Rye, New Hampshire, he entered the Boston University School of Theology. George was ordained a Methodist minister on June 10, 1934, and graduated with an STB degree. He was appointed pastor in Wyatts River, Vermont, and then their second child, Mary Elizabeth, was born shortly thereafter in 1936. He accepted a pastorate in Union Village, Vermont. His next calling was in Gilman, Vermont, where he joined the Walter G. Moore American Legion Post. He was later appointed state chaplain and historian for the Legion. In mid-1942, George decided to join the Army Chaplain Service, and he was appointed on July 24, 1942. He went on active duty August 8, 1942, the same day his son Wyatt enlisted in the Marine Corps. He was assigned to the chaplain school at Harvard and reported to the 411th Coast Artillery Battalion at Camp Davis. He was then united with the chaplains Good, Pooling, and Washington at Camp Milas Standish in Taunton, Massachusetts. In their fateful trip on the USAT Dorchester, Chaplain Fox was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart and the Distinguished Service Cross.
Ernie Duran, reading for Rabbi Alexander Good. Ernie's a past Post 209 adjutant and is also a charter member of Post 209.
Alexander Good was a Jewish rabbi. He was born in Brooklyn, New York on May 10, 1911. His father was a rabbi. His mother, Faye, had two other sons, Joseph and Moses, and a daughter, Agatha. Alexander received medals at Eastern High School, Washington, D.C. for tennis, swimming, and track. He led his class in scholarships, too. He planned to follow his father's footsteps and become a rabbi, but that did not keep him from having a laughing, shouting, hail fellow, well-met boyhood with the Protestant Catholic boys in his neighborhood. He graduated from Eastern in 1929. He entered the University of Cincinnati and graduated in 1934 with an A.B. degree, and then on to Hebrew Union College with a B.H. degree in 1937. He later received his Ph.D. from Johns Hopkins University in 1940. Alexander married his childhood sweetheart, Teresa Flax, daughter of Nathan and Rose Flax. Teresa was a niece of singer and motion picture star Al Jolson. When they were married on October 7, 1935, his first assignment as an ordained rabbi was at the synagogue in Marion, Indiana in 1936. On July 16, 1937, he was transferred to the Beth Israel Synagogue in York, Pennsylvania until mid-1942. Alexander and Teresa had a daughter, Rosalie, who was born in 1939. Rabbi Good applied to become a chaplain with the U.S. Navy in January 1941, but he was not accepted at the time. Right after Pearl Harbor, he tried again, this time with the Army, and received an appointment on July 21st, 1942. Chaplain Good went on to active duty on August 9th, 1942, and he was selected for the chaplain school at Harvard. He had courses in map reading, first aid, law, and chemical warfare. Chaplain Good was then assigned to the 333rd Airborne Squadron in Goldsboro, North Carolina. In October 1942, he transferred to Camp Miles Standish in Taunton, Massachusetts. And Alex was reunited with Chaplains Fox, Poland, and Washington, who were classmates at Harvard. It was January 1943 when he boarded the USAT Dorchester in Boston and embarkation to Greenland. Chaplain Good was killed in action on February 3, 1943 in the icy waters of the North Atlantic when the Dorchester was struck by a German U-boat. Chaplain Good was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart and the Distinguished Service Cross.
Jane Wright. Jane will be reading for Chaplain Clark Poland. Jane is the immediate past Auxiliary President of Unit 209 and currently serving as a Senior Vice Auxiliary President of Unit 209. Please come on up.
Clark Poling was a Dutch reformist minister. He was born on August 7, 1910, in Columbus, Ohio. He was the son of Susie Jane Vandersel of East Liberty, Ohio, and Daniel Poling of Portland, Oregon. Clark attended Whitney Public School in Auburndale, Massachusetts, where his teachers remembered his maturity and delicate side of his nature. The Auburndale days ended when his mother died in 1918, when Clark was just 8 years old. Clark's father was an evangelistic minister, and in 1936 was rebaptized as a Baptist minister. Reverend Daniel Poling was remarried on August 11, 1919, to Lillian Heingardner of Canton, Ohio. Clark attended Oakwood, a Quaker high school in Poughkeepsie, New York, and was a good student and an excellent football halfback. Clark was a council member and president of the student body. In 1929, he enrolled in Hope College in Holland, Michigan, and spent the last 2 years at Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey, graduating in 1933 with an A.B. degree. Clark entered Yale University's Divinity School in New Haven and graduated with his B.D. degree in 1936. He was ordained in the Reformed Church in America, and his first assignment was the First Church of Christ in New London. Shortly thereafter, he accepted the assignment of pastor of the First Reformed Church in Schenectady, New York. Clark was married to Betty Jung of Philadelphia, and the next year, Clark Jr. was born. With our country now at war with Japan, Germany, and Italy, he decided to become a chaplain. Talking with his father, Dr. Daniel Poling, who was a chaplain in World War I, he was told that the chaplains in that conflict sustained the highest mortality rate of all military personnel. Without hesitation, he was appointed on June 10, 1942 as a chaplain with the 131st Quartermaster Truck Regiment and was reported to Camp Shelby in Hattiesburg, Mississippi on June 25, 1942. Later, he attended the chaplain school at Harvard with chaplains Fox, Good, and Washington. 10 weeks later, the USAT Dorchester sunk on February 3, 1943, and his wife Betty gave birth to their daughter, Susan Elizabeth, on April 10th. Chaplain Poling was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart and Distinguished Service Cross.
Ray LaBossiere. Ray will be reading for Chaplain John Washington. Ray, you might want to walk a little slower. Your titles here may go a little while. Immediate past District 1 Commander, past 209 Commander, is currently serving as a District 1 Executive Committeeman and Post 209's Junior Vice Commander. Ray is also a charter member of Post 209.
John P. Washington, a Catholic priest. John P. Washington was born in Newark, New Jersey on July 18, 1908. His parents were Frank and Mary. In addition, they had daughters Mary, Anna, and sons Thomas, Francis, Leo, and Edmund. In 1914, John was enrolled at St. Rosa of Lima Catholic Elementary School. In those days, times were tough for a poor immigrant family, but John helped out. He took a newspaper route to help his mother with extra money. John was active in sports, and he also began piano lessons. He loved music and sang in the church choir. When he entered 7th grade, he felt strongly about becoming a priest. During the previous year, he became an altar boy and his priestly destiny was in process. John entered Seton Hall in South Orange, New Jersey to complete his high school and college courses in preparation for his priesthood. He graduated in 1931 with an AB degree. He entered Immaculate Conception Seminary in Darlington, New Jersey, and received his minor orders on May 26, 1933. John excelled in the seminary, was a subdeacon at all the solemn masses, and later became a deacon on December 25, 1934. John was elected prefect of his class and was ordained a priest on June 15, 1935. Father Washington's first parish was at St. Genevieve's in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and then he served at St. Venetius for a year. In 1938, he was assigned to St. Stephen's in Arlington, New Jersey. Shortly after the Pearl Harbor attack on December 7, 1941, he received his appointment as a chaplain in the United States Army. Father Washington went on active duty May 9, 1942. He was named Chief of the Chaplains Reserve Pool at Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana. In 1942, he was assigned to the 76th Infantry Division in Fort George Meade, Maryland. In November 1942, he reported to Camp Miles Standish in Taunton, Mass., and met Chaplain Fox, Good, and Pooling at Chaplain School in Harvard. Father Washington boarded the USAT Dorchester at the embarkation camp in Boston Harbor in January 1943, en route to Greenland. Chaplain Washington was killed in action on February 3, 1943, when the Dorchester was sunk by a German U-boat. Chaplain Washington was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart and the Distinguished Service Cross.
At this time, please join the choir in singing hymn number 891 in your hymnals. Jimmy Smith will now read President Truman's letter to Chaplain Pulling's father. Jimmy's a chaplain here at Post 209.
December 9, 1947. Dear Mr. Poling, the death of the 4 chaplains on February 3, 1943 when the transport Dorchester was sunk by enemy action in the North Atlantic is a heroic event without a parallel in American annals. The names of the 4 brave represented 3 faiths: First Lieutenant John P. Washington, Catholic; First Lieutenant Alexander D. Good, Jewish; First Lieutenant George L. Fox, Protestant; and First Lieutenant Clark V. Poling, Protestant, deserve the eternal remembrance of their fellow citizens. They have given their country and their world an elegant example of tolerance, charity, and a spirit of true brotherhood. Alas, the world today needs the example of tolerance, our own country as well as others. It is a sad commentary that we as Americans found it easier to die together on the battlefronts of the world than live together in peace and in goodwill at home. If we get from a heroic dead to be commemorated in an interfaith shrine at Philadelphia, capture something of their brave and tolerant spirit, just shall not have died in vain. We could hope for such a revival of religion as would banish from our hearts the spirit of envy, malice, intolerance, suspicion, and all ill will. In a life of selfless service to their fellow men and a holy death to the 4 chaplains exemplified that grand Old Testament teachings. And what doth the Lord require of thee but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God? What a noble thing it is that out of refinement of sorrow for love of loved and loving chaplain's son, you should have been moved to create this unique memorial. It will stand through the long generations to come to teach all of Americans that as men can die heroically as brothers, so they should live together in mutual faith and goodwill. May God bless and prosper this noble undertaking. Very sincerely yours, Harry Truman.
Commence with the laying of the 4 wreaths. We'll now ask Mr. Paul Miner to come forward and present the collect. Paul is a member of Squadron 209 with Sons of the American Legion.
God our fathers and our God, we thank you for the unity that the Dorchester Chaplains, these 4 men of God, demonstrated in life and in death. Unity that is not uniformity. Unity that strengthens within each of us every worthy loyalty of faith and practice. Unity that transcends all our differences and makes us one in loyalty in our country and our fellow men, and to our God. Grant us your abiding presence, and may we remain faithful to the spirit of our four chaplains, whose having learned to live and serve together in death were not divided.
Please stand at this time and cover for taps. A member of Post 1771 from the American Legion will perform taps, and their honor guard will be escorted. Before we begin, it is to be noted that many of the honor guard teams of Post 1771 are all members of the 1st Company Governor's Foot Guard. They are the country's longest and oldest serving military unit in the country. And it is a great honor to have them with us here this evening for this ceremony.
What? Ho! Order! Ho!
Please address the case flag on our memorial table. And salute.
Present. Ho! Order! Ho!
Two.
Right. Left. Hey! Forward. Ho! Forward. Ho! Right. Ho! Order. Ho! Yes.
Please join me in a moment of silence. Uncover. Please be seated. At this time, I'd like to ask Unit 209's Finance Officer, Claire Gagnon, to come up and read In Flanders Fields.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We the dead, short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take upon our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high, if ye break faith with us who die. We shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
The Chapel of the Four Chaplains down in Philadelphia, the National Chapel, they give out a number of awards nationwide. And one of those is the presentation of the Legion of Honor Award. And this is our 4th annual ceremony. And the first 3, we've meant to do it, we just never got to put in a nomination in. The nomination has to come in from the post. It goes to a nominating committee down in Philadelphia at the National Chapel. It's a great honor to be a recipient of this award. There's probably 400 a year on average nationwide who receive this. It is a very prestigious award. It sounds like a lot. You have to really be someone who really deserves this award to get it. They don't just give these out. We sent the nomination in on behalf of the Post and the community for our very first nominee from Post 209 this year, and it was approved within 24 hours. I was on the phone with Philadelphia, Michelle Nulfi, who's the administrative coordinator down there, and the nominee that we sent in was clearly someone who this award was made for. So I'm going to read to you, once we get the award winner down here, a letter from the Four Chaplains. But at this time, I'd like to have the commander of the post please escort Mr. Leo Benola and his wife down to the center. Please rise. Being escorted by Miss Bristol and Miss Forestville. Can you hear me? There we go. This was dated February 1st to Mr. Leo Benola, our Benola. Mr. Benola, congratulations. The Chapel of the Four Chaplains Awards Committee has reviewed and approved your nomination to receive the Chapel of the Four Chaplains Legion of Honor Award. We are happy to have your name added to our honor roll. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that his name will be in the National Chapel of the Four Chaplains in Philadelphia for eternity. Every award winner has her name placed down at the chapel. As a recipient of the Legion of Honor Award, you are a source of pride and inspiration for the Chapel of the Four Chaplains, as well as those who come into contact with you. We encourage you to continue the selfless service which brought you to our attention and moves us to recognize you publicly. We ask that you consider joining the growing chapel family and enroll in one of our annual membership groups. Don't tell Leo, but we already did that for him. You got a free membership to the chapel on Post 209. Your contribution will be used to support the chapel's many worthwhile programs, including the Legion of Honor, the National Student Scholarship Competition, Emergency Chaplain Corps, and the Veterans Outreach Programs. Sincerely, Bill, he's not here, so Kamer, Executive Director. I hope I pronounced that right. So that letter was given to for you, Leo. At this time, I'd like for you and your wife Peggy, come on up here. Stand here, please. Leo, on behalf of Post 209, on behalf of the community and everyone here today, we are honored, absolutely honored, to have you be our very first nominee, accepted nominee of this award, this very prestigious award. So here you go, Leo.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. With that, for all the veterans in the audience, we know what the challenge coins are. We know how we present the challenge coin to the recipient of the challenge coin. You place it in your palm and you place it in the recipient's hand. That's a challenge coin that's from the chapel of the Four Chaplains.
Thank you.
I've got on this before. This one really hits me hard. I want to thank Post 209 for this award. In a million years, I would have never thought I'd get something like this. I want to tell you something about Post 209, if you don't know. When they came to Forestville, they weren't welcomed with open arms. And Chuck came to me one day and said, could I come to a Forestville Village meeting? And I said, yes. He came the first week, and I thought maybe another week, month will come or so. He came the second month, and on the second month, we needed someone to take over the Forestville Village Association Memorial Day Parade. And Chuck was the only one that said he'd do it. And truthfully, I thought, he doesn't know what he's getting into.
He was right.
The parade has been a success every single year. There's only one bad thing that Chuck hasn't accomplished yet, is how to make the rain go away.
Maybe you can help us.
When I became involved with Chuck, I didn't know anybody in 209, maybe one or two, that was it. But Chuck took Rick Leach and myself in with him, made us feel at home, and Chuck in 209 does so many things that a lot of you people don't know. He does the fishing derby, that's excellent.
Right.
We did a bus trip, excellent. He does, for Christmas time for the young kids, they give out gifts, perfect. I don't want to keep using excellent, because you think I'm wrong. He did a auction, and when he told me he was doing it, and he told me he had 2 weeks to do it, I says, something's wrong with him. Because how can you accomplish this in 2 weeks? And let me tell you, my wife will verify this, and I went, and that night I was dumbfounded that auction went off so great that some of these organizations would take maybe 6, 7 years to accomplish what they did. And for the young boys and ladies here, I hope you'll support 209, because they do an awful lot for the people here. And one thing I'm very happy to say is I really welcome, and I know everybody in Forestville is very glad that they came to Forestville, because they do a fantastic job. And like I say to you, boys and girls, get involved, help them out, because maybe one day you'll be sitting up here or standing and getting this. So thank you, and thank everybody.
Just to touch on what Lee was talking about, it's a team effort. It's not me. We've got some great men and women in the post that are really dedicated to this community. I just want, they deserve most, if not all, of the applause. So we do have one more person we're going to give a coin to and a lapel pin. Now, I was going to actually, Leo's coming back down here. Leo, don't sit down. Come back up, please. Your first official duty as the award winner. Come on. Go ahead. I'd like to ask Pastor Joanna to please come forward. We moved here in September of last year, and it's from day one. It's been to say it's an outstanding partnership is an understatement. It's been great. We appreciate the use of your beautiful sanctuary for this. And on behalf of the members here, I'd like to presents you with a coin
Thank you.
from the four chaplains. And Leo, if you can, I'd like you to, your first official duty from the National Chapel of Four Chaplains, please present.
Thank you.
I want to thank you. We're looking forward to a continued great partnership with Gloria Day. And for all the members of Gloria Day here, I know there's a bunch up in the balcony. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take a moment to thank all of you for being here. And, you know, it's like Chuck said, it's a beautiful partnership, and we are, they're always thanking us for allowing us to, that we allow them to use our space, but really they do a lot for us, and we're really thankful to have you guys as a part of our community here, and for the ways in which you guys help us out. Like one part I think about, we had a big celebration where we were celebrating our solar panels. Ironically, that day it poured all day long. And so we very quickly had to figure out how to move things inside, and the Legion showed up and helped us in a huge, huge way. So we are so thankful to have them be part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor. Oh, Leo, I forgot to tell you, you have to continue this program up here. All right, you can stay there. Okay, please join us as we sing hymn number 890 in your hymnals. I'd like to ask Monique Melanson Hunter from Unit 209 to please come forward to sing Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, oh, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my that grace appeared, the hour that I first believed. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, oh, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. I was blind, but now I see.
Thank you. Okay, before we wrap up the ceremony, I'd like to say a few words. I'd like to say a few words before we retire the colors and conclude with the ceremony. I think that's what I just said. Post 209 would like to give a special thank you to all in attendance here this evening. Your presence ensures that the legacy and sacrifice of these 4 heroic chaplains will live on. It is important that we never forget not only these 4 chaplains, but all those like them that have given the ultimate sacrifice for this great country and all the citizens of this great land. It is our duty and our obligation to teach and carry on their legacy, memory, and heroic story. It is our duty to teach the next generation and generations to follow so that they will never, ever be forgotten. When you leave here tonight, please keep these 4 chaplains in your thoughts and pass on their story to others. With that being said, we hope that you will stop into the Hope Chapel to the rear of the sanctuary. We have I think we ordered like 14 pizzas, extra large pan pizzas, so there's plenty of food. One group of people that I don't think I put in the program that we really need to recognize this evening, and that's the choral group. Big round of applause. They're from the choral group here at Gloria Day, and I believe the Bristol Choral Society. I said that? All right. And of course, Mr. John Parsons. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, please stand as Pastor Joanna will now lead us in the benediction. Uncover.
This night and every night, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord's face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. Amen. Amen.
Commence with the retiring of the colors.
Retrieve.
And salute.
2. Retreat.
2. That concludes the ceremony. We have Post 209 bid you a good night, and a safe journey home, and by all means, please stop and have a piece of pizza. Thank you all very, very much for attending tonight.